This podcast is brought to you by AC Americas, a distributor of lighting, audio, and video solutions. ACAmericas.net.
From sold-out stadiums to intimate live performance venues, sound engineers agree on one thing for the best digital mixing consoles for live sound. The only name that matters is Digico. As the recognized worldwide standard for live audio mixing, Digico consoles are renowned for their industry-leading sound quality and ease of use. Whether your application is in a church, broadcast, theater, corporate, sports, or installed sound, Digico offers compact and affordable products. From the S21 all the way up to the pioneering power of the Quantum 852, Digico delivers the workflow, the feature set, and the absolute reliability that the world's biggest tours and programs have come to rely upon. If you're looking for a sound console, look to Digico for your answer. For more information on Digico, go to digico.biz. That's digico.biz.
Earthworks Audio is a proud sponsor of the Tech Arts Podcast. From front of house to center stage for over 25 years, Earthworks microphones have sculpted the sounds of your favorite concerts, venues, and performances. Capturing emotion with sound. Earthworksaudio.com.
This is the Tech Arts Podcast, where we talk about tech, leadership, and all things that concern church audio, video, and lighting.
Welcome to the Tech Arts Podcast and the Earthworks Audio Studios. My name is DL. So glad to have you joining us today. On this episode of the Tech Arts Podcast, we're diving into a topic every tech leader faces: how to work with creatives and still be friends. Joining us is a true giant in the world of church tech team building. For over 30 years, he's been shaping backstage ministries at churches like North Coast, Saddleback, and Skyline Church. Now he's taking his insights on the road as general manager of design and projects at HouseRight. You've heard him speak at Philo, SALT, CFX, and just about every major tech and creative conference out there. He's a team builder, a mentor, a legend. Please welcome to the Tech Arts Podcast, Dennis Choy. Hey, Dennis.
And thanks for having me, man. Whoa, what an intro. I don't know if I can live up to that.
Yeah, are you going to live up to the legend?
Yeah, depends on what kind of legend. But yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate the shout out, man.
Well, Dennis, I think a lot of people know who you are, but can you tell us a little bit about your family and how your journey led you to the church tech?
Yeah, so I started out really as a youth pastor. So I've always been in ministry. I've been actually, this is the first time in my life I'm not in vocational ministry since I've been 18. I jumped in, loved the youth. I obviously got saved, youth group. And then I wanted to give back right away. So I did, I interned, I worked at just a full-time job, just to make money, and was going to school, part-time, and then interned, in junior high ministry. And that was kind of where I got my love. At the same time, interesting enough, the church my home church, Whittier Area Community Church, it used to be Whittier Area Baptist Fellowship. They were actually pretty progressive as a church. So they had, I'm going to date myself, but back in the late 80s, they had like a video projector.
The late 80s?
Yeah, it's way back. They had a video projector, and again, this is people. If you weren't even born yet, you wouldn't know what this would mean. There were slide projectors for visuals, right? For lyrics, you actually ran slides, and a slide.
Yeah.
And you're right, and you had to backwards and forward.
So to assist all of those out there that are 25 years old, we're going to put a picture up on the screen right now.
There you go, Google.
Oh yeah, you can Google it too. Yeah, Google it.
Yeah, but that was so. They were really at that point was a very technically advanced church, and so there were people that worked for Disney that were part of the team. And then if you know anything about youth ministry, you know that most youth pastors, they play with all the technical toys. They get in there and they pull everything apart when you're not supposed to, and do stuff with it. So I got to play with video gear, video projectors, audio stuff. We had a choir, a full band, orchestra. We had everything at this church, and so I got to play with all of that as a young guy. So that kind of sparked the interest also, and learned from some of these Disney guys that knew the industry. So that's kind of where it all started, way back in the day, just paralleling ministry and technology. So it was a lot of fun. But,
Well, let's jump into the subject here.
yeah, yeah.
I know you've worked extensively in both technical and ministry environments. So, what's the biggest communication gaps, misunderstandings, tensions that you've observed between tech teams and worship creatives?
We got how long is it? We got a couple hours for this.
It's a podcast, man. We can go
we
23
go.
hours.
We keep going.
And no one will be listening.
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
go
right,
23 hours.
right. No, this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, David. And you've worked with technical people and creative people, and senior pastors and executive pastors and children. I mean, it's so there for me. I guess you say what the biggest difference or tension is. Typically, we just don't understand each other. Really, we don't understand how each other thinks, and it's very different, but we always end up in the same place, right?
Yeah,
So
we think they think the same way we do.
exactly. And then the opposite. A creative person thinks a technical engineer brain. There's a spectrum, right? I say extreme creative, hyper creative, all the way to like an engineer, right, type of brain. And then there's everybody kind of falls somewhere in between, right? There are a few that are, so an engineer is typically kind of a real black and white. If you go all the way extreme, right? Yes or no. You got to have the actual facts and details. Where creative is like, there's no boundaries. What are you talking about? Like I can do anything. Anything's possible with anything. And so
Yeah, they don't
abstract
know
art.
what the word facts and details are. They're like, that's in
Yeah,
the dictionary. What is that?
yeah, yeah. We figure that stuff out later, right? Yeah, because it's the idea and the
Right.
concept. But like I said, it's like abstract art is, a fork can be a piece of art to an abstract art person. To an engineer, it's a fork. Like you use it specifically to eat certain types of food, not even every kind of food, right? It's so down to so specifics on one side. And so the tension is always somewhere in between of like, what are you talking about? Or what did you mean? Or an expectation or a non-expectation that happens one side or the other, I think I've told this story in teaching at other conferences before, but I was once called a dream killer, right? Because as a tech person, production person, engineer mind, anything in that realm, you tend to have to go through every possible scenario how something could go wrong before you can say it's right. Right. So if
Yeah.
someone says an idea like, I want to throw a bunch of elephants on stage, and you're like, wait a minute. And you have to think your mind, is it strong enough? Is the stage big enough? How are they going to get back on? How are they going to get off? What if they go to the bathroom on stage? Like you go through every single scenario before you can go, oh, it may be possible. But if you're an extroverted engineer brain, you may be saying that out loud, and all people are hearing around you is no, 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 no. And then they may even not even wait around for the yes. Right. If you're an introverted engineer, technical person, then your brain, you're not even saying a word. You're just processing in your brain. And then a couple days later, and so they're like, oh, what's wrong with that person? He's not even saying a word. He must be scared. Right. So there's that just a non-understanding of the type of personality and how we process and think that typically becomes one of the main pieces of misunderstanding and of tension, right? It's always how we communicate it. That's most of the problems, and then you can get into how you communicate that. So communication and how you do it are two different things. So yeah.
Well, so Dennis, let me ask you this. By the way, putting elephants on the stage, I actually heard that
Oh,
there's a gentleman out there who tames a live horse on stage as a
yes.
part of
Yep.
his.
Yes.
I can't remember
Yep.
the name of the ministry, but like
Yep.
these are real things that get
Hmm.
asked in real meetings, like
Right.
elephants and
Yep.
giraffes and all the stuff that can happen. But let me ask you kind of a sub question of that. How do I go about understanding the creative personality? Or how do I go about understanding the technical personality?
That's good. Yeah. And again, I mean, we could talk about this for days. I mean, there's so much in the personality differences. But for me, what I typically start out with someone's asking me about how do I get along? How do I help understand more? Right? for me, on the production engineer technical side, if you're leaning towards that, part of that, David, is just listening before you try to actually come up with the answer. So often we're supposed to have the answer. Sometimes even before, right? If your pastor walks you and says, "Hey, how much is an LED wall?" And you're like, "Oh, I kind of have to," they want you to know the answer, just like that, like buying a TV at the store. And you're like, "I got to do some research. I don't know." Right. And so I think some of the time we just are caught in like trying to answer the question and we don't even really hear what they're asking. And sometimes, you know this, a creative, extroverted person just needs to process out loud. So it's a
Mm,
bunch of
yeah.
ideas that actually are never going to actually happen, but they can't get to their idea unless they're processing a lot of other ideas out loud. Right, so you get caught in that. You're listening. You're like, oh my goodness. Oh wow, we can't do. You want to do all those things, and at the end, if you listen and you wait at the end, they go, actually, no, I don't want to do any of those. That's a dumb idea. Like, right? And you go, oh, wow. I'm glad I waited to the end because I would have started working on those things. So a lot of that, again, we talk about communication style, but it's a process style for me that so often we jump ahead. So half of that is just actually listening to the other person on really what they're trying to get to. And at the end, maybe saying, okay, now, which one do you really want to try to flush out? Because I can do that from here, but it would take me a lot of time to flush out every single one of those scenarios. Can you pick one or two of those? Right. And I say the opposite too. Same with the creative side of a person who is caught in the idea and want to share and talk about. Like sometimes you just need to listen to the answer. Like, is it actually practical? It's going to cost how much? Wow. You actually listen to some of those practical things and say, maybe that's not the best choice. Maybe we need to do this instead, or maybe we need to brainstorm some more kind of thing. But that's where I see somewhere areas we can start is just listen to each other.
Yeah, and hear what Dennis said there. He said the word listen. Anybody who's been married for any amount of time understands that there's a difference between hearing and listening. You can hear your wife and regurgitate back exactly what she said, but did you really listen to your wife? There's totally a difference. And the listening part is the engagement, eye contact, understanding the flow. And I like to tell technicians, if you're confused about something your creative person is doing or you think it's wild and crazy, ask some questions like, what kind of budget do we have to do this? 9 times out of 10, you ask that question in a form of a question, not we don't have the budget, but what kind of budget do we have? You'll hear a more responsive answer like, oh, you know what? I'm not sure. I haven't thought that through. Like, is this going to cost a lot? And now you're creating a dialogue, which is listening. And hearing is sometimes putting regurgitating back an answer. And so that's what I like to tell people is like, hey, listen to what's going on, engage in it, ask questions before you make your judgmental answer. And then judgmental is the great word. Try to remove all judgment from it and just be interactive in the process.
That's so true. I totally resonate with that. I think something you said there, I think what people don't realize is every single person is creative. There isn't a non-creative and a creative, right? But what we understand about creativity is that certain creatives need boundaries. They need to know what they can do and what's the sandbox I can play in. And there are other creatives who they don't want any boundaries, right? They like, no, don't give me a deadline. Don't give me those things. And so that's part of the other side is like typically a production engineer brain needs to know like how much, what do I got to play with? What are the parameters? And then I'll go create whatever you want within that, as long as I find out what those boundaries are. It's the famous scene in Apollo 13 movie. Yeah, if you remember this, David, when they needed to make a filter, right? They're in this capsule, and they had to, they don't have this filter to filter out their air up there, and they don't have a spare one. And so the guys at NASA, like all the engineers, they throw all the parts that are inside that capsule on a table and so it goes up like, we got to make this filter out of all this. And guess what they did? They did it because they knew the parameters. Like this is all the stuff you have in the room, right? In the capsule. And so it shows you there's incredible creativity with that. in solving a problem or creating something, but they just have to have the boundaries. And oftentimes creatives don't understand that at all, extreme creatives, because they don't have boundaries, right? And then the opposite is true as well on the engineer side. It's like creative doesn't have boundaries. So sometimes we have to ask those questions, like you said, to get some boundaries and direction in, like, how much do we really have to spend? How much time do we have? Like, okay, you need this tomorrow. That's way different than a year from now. I can do a lot more, right, with things. So.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to my next question along those lines of structure, and that is, how do you balance the need for structure and precision with the often, I would say 100% time fluid, spontaneous nature of the creative worship personality?
It's again, we can talk for hours on this, but I'll just tell you up front, I think that I like to use the word guidelines. I think we sometimes use the word rules or policies and things like on one side versus the other. And I say, what are the
I've heard some churches even use the word the law. This is the law. You have to
like
do it this way.
right. Well, most creatives like just cringe when you say that. So if that's the language you're saying back to them, like, well, what's the policy or the law or the rule that we're supposed to follow? And they go, well, like, so sometimes we need to just encourage, like, can we put some guidelines around this? Can we put a deadline guideline? Can we right? Can we put something? So because all one group is saying, the production world, the engineer world, saying is that I want to do what you want to do, but I need to know how much time I need to spend on it, what I need to do to create the best thing possible with the resources we have. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what it is, right? I heard a real famous quote by J.J. Abrams, filmmaker. He was making, I think he was making one of the Star Wars movies at the time, and they just said, "Hey, when do you know your movie is finished?" And J.J. Abrams just says, he goes, it's never finished. I just
Never.
release it. I just release it, right? Like
Yeah.
whoever the company that owns says you got to release it on this date, and so they do. And then sometimes you've seen guys go back and try to re-edit or you fix scenes that they hated, didn't like, or add scenes back in. And that's just what it is. It's always a process to a creative side. So on the production side, we understand that and say, okay, I need to give some guidelines so I know how much time and attention to give to that. And again, that's where that healthy conversation is. I'm going to use a word like transparent, and it's a word that I think often gets missed. We need to be transparent with each other. It's a two-way street. It's not just one street, right? But sometimes someone has to start sometimes, and sometimes you just need to be really transparent in that I'd like to do all of that for you, but like everyone realizes, we don't have enough time. So I want to help get the best idea to the table, the best way we can do it with the resources we have. And so I just need some help doing that. And if we continue to change, we may never be able to get the best thing on the table. We're going to get some pretty okay things, right? And so we need to
Yeah.
understand that excellence or excellent pursuit that we talk about, like we're going to pursue that, then we need more time. We need to get more, stable, and figure out what we actually want to do with things. So it's a combo, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you know what's interesting to me? You used the word excellence just now, and what I find interesting is I think technicians hold themselves to the standard of excellence much higher than the creative team. That's not always true, but what I mean by that is a creative walks into the meeting with this general framework of what they would like to do for this special production, and they're not thinking perfection and excellence. You know what I mean? I know perfection's different from excellence, but a lot of techs tend to excellence. They say, oh, it's got to be this, 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 and this. It's got to be at this standard. Most creatives walk into that meeting and they're really just wanting to spitball and kind of understand how to move towards excellence, but they're not trying to start out there. I think technicians try to start out there. And I think if you just spitball with the creative a little bit, you'll get there. It just may take a few rounds of understanding budget and limitations and guidelines, as you call them, and avoiding the law talk. But, trying to, creatives are notorious for saying, let's think outside the box.
yeah.
What they're really saying is, hey, let's see how we can move the ball down the road towards this idea. And it may not be an elephant on the stage. It may be the horse on the stage that's doing what we, have brought the guy in to do.
Right.
But, we're talking a lot of practicality and, theory and how to put this together. But Dennis, do you have a story that you can tell about a tech creative conflict that really turned into a breakthrough moment for the team?
Mm, mm. Probably have too many over my
Yeah.
30 something years to tell. And
We
I
were we
probably,
were talking a few years back, and you're like, I need to write a book, and I'm like, Dennis, you do
yeah,
need to write
yeah.
a book.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, just dumb taxes I've paid over my years of working with churches, man. Yeah. I, yeah, I'm trying to, there's several I could probably bring up, and I won't use the names, and, to protect the innocent. But there, and I mean, in general, like I would tell you that I can tell you over and over again, times when, again, my side of trying to make things happen as quickly and as fast as possible clouded my mind of actually hearing the idea and then trying to really come up with the best solution to create that idea, right? And so there was this constant tug of wars of like, nope, 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 can't, no, I need, no, I need to know exactly what I want you to tell me exactly. It's like, and that creative brain was, is so one of my old senior pastors would tell you that they have what they call fuzzy picture vision. So they would say an idea like, let's do this massive outdoor event where we can invite, thousands of people to our campus and have some community, and then the first thing I would say is like, well, where are they all going to park if we do this all in the parking lot? Like, how are we going to do that? Like, oh, well, I don't have that vision yet. I don't have that picture yet, right? I just have the idea, and I really, David, I had to learn like, no, don't start with those questions, even though those are the questions in my brain. It's like, okay, well, what are you really wanting to do? You really want to do something in the parking lot? Like, give me some more. Okay, oh, you want to create a teaching moment, and you want to do a kind of a story that you walk people through, and okay, well, we could do that on the campus, but so it could be outdoors. Doesn't have to be inside a building, but it doesn't have to be in the parking lot either. So, like, as you guide people through, and again, I can probably think about a million examples, and but there's so many. It's like that was just kind of a normal occurrence as I learned more and more about a creative thinking brain that I just had to keep asking those guidelines, and we did end up creating something pretty amazing, right? And the costs, we had to explain the costs and understand that whole process through all of it and real numbers and sort of thing like that. But that happened over and over again in multiple scenarios with different creatives and pastors and team. So
You know what I hear from that story, Dennis, is one-on-one interaction. You didn't do that over email. I mean, some of it may have been electronic, but it sounds like
yeah,
you got into a room, you asked some real questions, you had some real things you had to work through, and you came out with a product
yeah,
that was spectacular.
yeah,
I think a lot of people want to text it in,
hmm,
and I'm just not sure with creatives that's the best
yeah,
path to moving through the
absolutely.
technical aspects of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, David. Actually, you just reminded me because I think, to be honest, I think there are some production people who shouldn't be in those brainstorm meetings. I think it just is too much for them. I think it's too much. There's too much processing they're trying to do, and so it would be better if they weren't in that meeting. Even though they want to be in the table, they want to be around the table. Everybody wants to be at that meeting, but sometimes you don't realize like that's actually worse for you. You'd want to be in the second meeting, the
Mm.
logistical meeting. The like, here are the ideas. Here's a rough framework of stuff. Now let's start putting some stuff together, and then we got to push it back, right? I don't know if everybody has a creative process, but there's so many steps in a creative process, and one of them for me is refocus. Like I talk about focus, brainstorm, focus, and then there's this refocus process after you've focused the group and you get some logistical things and ask some questions, and then you have to go back maybe to the senior leadership and say, hey. Those may not work, but here's some other ideas that are similar to that we come back around. And so I think it's it's a process, like you said, David, and it definitely does not work over email or text. And so some people aren't necessarily wired for that. But that's where, if you're going to be a leader in this world, in this area of ministry, you're going to either have to learn to work with that process, and a lot of times it's real in person, or you have to figure out the best ways, or maybe you take yourself out of certain meetings and you have someone else go, or you don't have, you wait till the second meeting. That's part of leadership, is understanding yourself too and going, I don't know if I can do that. I'm making it worse in that process. Right.
Figuring it out.
Yeah.
Well, we teased this earlier on in the podcast, and I want to unpack it a little bit further. And it was this question here: how can both sides, tech and creative, intentionally build relational equity so disagreements don't become personal? And that's the key word right there, personal.
Mm-hmm.
So unpack that a little bit more. We hit it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, but unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to get real practical, because it really is, it's about learning about.
It's a good answer, and I cannot wait to hear it. Dennis will talk about that and also answer questions like, what rhythms, routines, and meetings should we have during the week to be an effective tech leader? All of that is coming up on part 2 of the podcast, which starts in just a few minutes. Right now, let's hear about mic techniques with Earthworks Audio. On today's segment, we talk about the 5 levels of capturing choir sound. Joining us in this discussion is the marketing manager for Earthworks Audio, Nick Canovas. Nick, my solution for choir miking is to just not even have a choir. Get rid of them and just have band and vocals. But I must admit, that is taking the easy way out. So if I'm looking for a great choir miking solution, I hear Earthworks Audio has microphones that can really bring a choir back to life.
We absolutely do. Bold strategy, too, of not having a choir. I might take you up on that at some point.
Yeah, it's like no choir, no problem, right? But yep, all fun aside, it's true. A lot of churches, they don't have to have a choir. They have contemporary bands and things of that nature. But some churches, the choir's the thing. That's what they have to have, and that's what they rely on. So how does Earthworks resolve the choir miking problem?
Well, first, it comes down to recognizing the core issue at hand, which is the fact that miking a choir can be quite difficult. You've got a lot of different voices in one space. You have to deal with the acoustics of the space itself. And just finding a microphone that can solve that issue for you of just making your choir sound as rich and as full and as beautiful as it should, while taking into account the aspects of the space that you're in, it's a lot to ask of any piece of gear. Earthworks has our flagship choir miking system, the FlexWand FW730, and that's really taken off in houses of worship. It's a fully integrated boom stand system that captures choirs effortlessly. You throw 3 of these on your choir of like 20, 30, 40 people, and you're going to be getting a brilliant and, most importantly, a unified sound. The generous polar pattern means that you're not getting sound that is just focusing on one singer that's right in front of the microphone. It's generous. It's going to give you that rich, blended sound that you're looking for. And to dive into this further, we think about choir miking as something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, though we call it the hierarchy of choir miking needs. So at the first level, the bottom level, you have simply avoiding bad things. So that's no distortion, that's no feedback, that's no harshness, that's nothing that would actively cause a listener who doesn't know anything about audio to like wince or to think like, oh, there was an issue there. What was going on? So that's level 1. Level 2 is maintaining control, which is just simply, you have a firm grasp on your mix. There may not necessarily be anything fancy about it, but at the very least, you don't have any issues with it. Here, your main tools and what you're going to be using to get to this level are mic placement, which is key in any situation, but especially with miking a choir. And of course, any sort of basic signal processing that you throw on at first. So that might be EQ, compression, anything like that. The third level is intelligibility. So at level 2, you have a sound that is passable, and you have your choir that's being heard. But what are they saying? What are the words that they're trying to get across? What's the meaning that they're trying to convey to the audience? And that's what level 3 is all about. You want the words to actually be intelligible. And in tandem with that as well, you want the voices to blend together in a tangible way. You don't want one singer or a handful of singers just poking out in the mix. You want something that is unified. You want a body of voices coming together as one. And that's where level 3 is going to get you.
So yeah, you also want your choir to blend with the system, right? You don't want it to stick out like here's these people sitting over here and then the band over here. You want it to blend so it feels natural between the speakers and what's happening on the platform, right, Nick?
Absolutely. And that's where the fourth level of this pyramid comes into play, which is presence. A lot of people, when they're miking choirs, their only goal is just to get something that's decent. Like they set up the mics, the choir sounds fine. It gets them up to level 3 of this pyramid. But what we try to do with our choir miking solutions is make it so that getting to that third level is instantaneous. You set up the microphones and they already bring you to that level so that you then can really spend your time not on setting up and not on trying to just get a passable sound, but to really bring out the artistry in your choir and to really create an experience that is second to none for your audience. And so yeah, level 4 is presence, that idea of, you want to make the sound bigger, but not necessarily louder. You really want to master that blend so that the PA and the choir almost become one. And the idea that there's technology present really fades away. And it really becomes about that one-to-one connection with the audience and the ensemble. And that's where we get to level 5, which is just emphasizing art and creativity. You are now mixing and capturing sound at a point where you can fully focus on bringing out everything that your choir is giving you and really bringing out that sound. So any sort of signal processing that you're doing is not done for corrective purposes. It's really done to enhance creativity. And that's what our tools, that's what our choir miking solutions are meant to do. They're meant to get you to that point where you're really delving into the creativity, not only for yourself as an engineer, but for your congregation as well. Because when that process is made easier, that's going to make their lives easier, and then they get to focus on their craft as well. And the end result is just an incredible choir sound for your audience.
So you talked a little bit about the FW730. We're looking at it right here. It's a beautiful microphone. But talk to us a little bit about the C30 and the P30. What's the difference between that and the FW730?
Absolutely. So the use case is the primary difference. The C30 is meant for hanging installations. So if you want a choir mic, but you don't want the integrated boom stand that the FlexWand offers, the C30 comes with an included 30-foot Canare Star Quad cable that you can hang from the ceiling. It's a very easy solution, no difficulty in setting it up. And then the P30 is if you want that same sound from the C30 and the FlexWands, but you want it in a more conventional microphone setup that comes with an XLR port. So if you want more flexibility in how you use the microphone, maybe you want a choir microphone that can also work for capturing instruments or even the podium if you wanted to. If you really want something that is flexible and all around an excellent mic, the P30 is the mic for you.
For more information on Earthworks Audio, go to earthworksaudio.com. They make choir miking simple. earthworksaudio.com. From sold-out stadiums to intimate live performance venues, sound engineers agree on one thing for the best digital mixing consoles for live sound. The only name that matters is Digico. As the recognized worldwide standard for live audio mixing, Digico consoles are renowned for their industry-leading sound quality and ease of use. Whether your application is in a church, broadcast, theater, corporate, sports, or installed sound, Digico offers compact and affordable products. From the S21 all the way up to the pioneering power of the Quantum 852, Digico delivers the workflow, the feature set, and the absolute reliability that the world's biggest tours and programs have come to rely upon. If you're looking for a sound console, look to Digico for your answer. For more information on Digico, go to digico.biz. That's digico.biz. Right now, let's hear from Paragon 360 and the Paragon Angle.
3 principles to building a thriving tech ministry. Treat it like a ministry, provide strong leadership, and design for success. Hello, I'm Ryan Cowan, president of Paragon 360, and this is the Paragon Angle. At Paragon 360, we help our clients create engaging environments. For many, that means updating audio, video, and lighting systems, many of which have not been holistically updated in decades. This major leap forward with worship technologies leads to a question that I often get from churches all over the country. How do we build a successful tech ministry? It's a valid concern, as many of our clients rely on a small group of key volunteers who have been successful with limited resources for many years. As they contemplate investing in new systems, they are faced with the need to grow their volunteer base to operate these new systems now and into the future. The answer to this question boils down to 3 simple principles. First and foremost, treat it like a ministry. For the people who consistently volunteer in the tech ministry, this is how they worship. They have God-given talents, and they're choosing to use those talents to serve the kingdom. They may be professional technicians or amateur enthusiasts, but just like any other ministry, they need to be fed. The most successful tech ministries we see offer a space that is just for that team. But it's more than just a hangout. It's a space that provides opportunities for hospitality and fellowship and connection for people who share a love for worship technology. Give your tech ministry a clear mission and vision that ties into your church's bigger purpose. Communicate that vision often, and don't limit ministry opportunities to Sunday mornings. Why not schedule a Bible study, a discipleship night, or a team building event just for the tech team? Fostering an environment in which this team can serve together and lean on one another will create a welcoming atmosphere that will attract others. Next, leadership is key. Strong leadership is the backbone of any ministry, and tech is no exception. Here's the thing. Usually, the most skilled audio engineer or video director ends up leading the team. But if they're stuck behind a console every Sunday, how can they truly serve their volunteers? If a volunteer makes a mistake or a piece of gear fails, who's going to be there to support them? Great leaders need to step back from the controls and focus on developing, training, and scheduling their team. A leader's true job is to make sure their team succeeds, which usually means setting someone else up for the win. Making the transition from one who does to one who leads can be difficult, but can also be very rewarding. Support these leaders by giving them the resources they need to create the ministry environment I just described. Train them to lead and train them how to minister to others, and make sure they know it's okay for their team to make mistakes, as long as they constantly improve. And remember, great leaders ask their team for feedback. Finally, design your tech ministry for success. You probably have a core group of volunteers who are rock stars. They deliver distraction-free worship experiences week after week. But when something does go wrong, they're the ones that feel the heat. That pressure can scare off potential new volunteers. So how do you set everyone up to win? Start with systems that are designed to be easy to use, reliable, and deliver consistent results. Partner with an integrator who understands this vision and can support it with their partnerships. Think about creating a training pipeline across your campus. For example, use similar equipment in the children's ministry as you do in the main worship center. That way, volunteers can start small, build their confidence, and work their way up to more complex systems. Offer low-stakes training sessions, maybe a Saturday workshop or a midweek practice run. When volunteers feel supported and equipped, they're more likely to step up and stick around. So there you have it. 3 principles to building a thriving tech ministry. Treat it like a ministry, provide strong leadership, and design for success. Put these into practice and you'll not only grow your team, but you'll also create a community where volunteers feel valued and empowered. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Paragon Angle.
Our main sponsor is Digital Great Commission Ministries. Whether you need help building a team, finding the right gear, or just better understanding the church tech world, DGCM is here for you. Because they are a 501c3 donor-sponsored organization, they come to your church for free and do an assessment of your tech, visitor engagement, and online streaming. Plus, we give away free gear. Be sure to go to audiovideolighting.com and register your email today. This will sign you up for all of the free giveaways and give you first access to everything we offer for free. If you want free resources, training, or consulting, contact Digital Great Commission Ministries today by going to audiovideolighting.com. That's audiovideolighting.com.
This podcast is brought to you by AC Americas, a distributor of lighting, audio, and video solutions. acamericas.net.
Let's get back into the podcast. We pick up with me asking Dennis about relational equity. Let's listen in. How can both sides, tech and creative, intentionally build relational equity so disagreements don't become personal? And that's the key word right there, personal. So unpack that a little bit more. We hit it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, but but unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to get real practical, because it really is, it's about learning about the other person and their personalities. I mean, you should, whoever you are, you should learn more about the people you're working with, their styles of communication, their styles of process, and their styles of decision making. And I think knowing that about a person can help you. Like, so let me give you an example about decision making. So if you're Myers-Briggs, if you know Myers-Briggs and you're a feeler, if not, you can Google that too. Um, feeler versus thinker, right? The feeler
I'd
is
suggest you put Myers-Briggs in there when you Google feeler. Like, let's make sure we're clear there.
yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, that's a good. Make sure you're in the right parameters of
Yeah,
yes. Be
tie
careful.
those two together.
Yes, yes. But so a feeler tends to go off of their feelings and emotions, based on what they see, feel, and those things, right? The good thing is that they usually have a pretty good pulse on how people around them are feeling. The bad thing is they often can use the word they. They won't like it. They don't want to do. They won't be on board with this, and they're really it's just a feeling. Sometimes it's not even a fact. And if you ask them, like, well, who? Tell me one person, they may say, well, actually, yeah, my spouse doesn't feel great about it. And you're like, well, okay, that's your spouse, and you're really like, that's different than, is there any employees or staff? So I think understanding like that a feeler can tend to make decisions based on how they think others will feel, right? That can be good and bad. Right, because then the other side is a thinker. A thinker would base decisions on the most logical, the Spock. That this is the right answer. That's why we should do it, even though it could hurt a bunch of people who are like, I'm not on board. I don't want to do it. I don't understand the purpose. I don't know why. Right, and so learning more about each other helps combat some later on down the line disagreements. You're still probably going to disagree, but at least you understand where the person's coming from. The other piece I would say really, and there's a bunch of things, but I really think that trust factor, Lencioni's book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. The base is trust, but it's not just like, David, I trust you. It's not like, David, I trust you with this podcast stuff. Like that's trust in one sense, but the trust is, I actually trust you with my reputation. I actually trust you with my name. So, like, if you were to talk about me somewhere else, I would trust that you'd say good things about me, or the truth, not even good thing. Yeah, that's the truth, right? Whatever that means. And so there's a whole different level of trust that we need to get to with the people we work with, especially with people who we think are very different from us. Right, that's really hard to really trust. You say it, but it's like, do you really trust them? You trust they're going to go, oh, production team, they're going to want to know some of these things, if I'm forming this idea, and vice versa, right? I'm going to have to ask some questions, on this idea based on them, because I trust that the idea and the core of what they want to do is right, and if I don't, I need to ask them. That's a transparency piece, but then. So that trust has to go two ways, but it's a core piece that we bypass pretty quickly. We're like, I trust you, I trust you. And it's like, I don't know. Have you really dove into that word and what it really means, right?
Yeah, trust, and we hear this word a lot, or words a lot, relational equity.
Mm-hmm.
I think we don't build relational equity with the worship team as technicians. We treat them kind of like the enemy sometimes, like they're coming to make us do work. And that's true. Yeah, they are creating work. But building relational equity goes a long way. I've seen arguments between friends dissolve so much faster because they understand what's going on in the other person's life versus not understanding what's going on in the other person's life, and it becomes more friction. And so I say this all the time, do life together. And I get it. We're busy. We have our own lives, etc. But how hard is it to do a 30-minute lunch with your worship team member, or to do a 30-minute lunch with somebody who you found out they may have lost somebody in their lives, and you just go out, take them out to lunch, talk to them, ask them what's going on in their life. This is a good kind of rule, and sometimes you don't have time for it. But for me, I always try to ask, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your life before we actually get to, can I have 5 microphones? You know what I mean? And so those relational equity questions and building that kind of that rubber band that's loosened now and not stretched will help you when you get into those tense situations and those tense disagreements, which are going to happen, but when both sides are seeing the other side's viewpoint a little bit better, which is another good thing you can do. You can say, what if I was in their shoes? How would I respond to this question? How would I need to do what I need to do if I was in their shoes? So I think relational equity is a big deal. Trust and relational equity.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it reminded me actually of a story. I had a pastor who every Friday I would inevitably get a call that says, "Hey, I had this idea. What if we put together a 5-minute baptism highlight video for this weekend?" And it's Friday, and we have Saturday services. And what the first, as a video editor, as a guy, first thing you're like, oh my gosh, that's impossible. Like, to do the best job we can, there's no way. Like, to go through years of footage to get the best baptisms alone, that take, right? And so this became kind of a normal thing. And so I was like, one time I said, you know what? I said, you know what, Pastor? Could I just show you a typical editing process, just so you understand like what you're asking for every time you call? Because it's not that the team doesn't want to do it; it's what you're asking for is way bigger than just a phone call. It's a lot of hours and time and research and checking. And the pastor was absolutely, and this was the walking in their shoes. I wanted to show them actually what it took to do it. And this was, I'm going back way back when, you had to, capture footage, off of a recording or a digital, something like that. And you have to ingest that in real time. Like, it wasn't just drag and drop. It was like, you have 4 hours of footage. You have to capture 4 hours of footage. It takes 4 hours to take it into the computer, right? And so anyway, long story short, I walked them through, he said, hey, so could we do something on Monday? And they're like, yeah, I probably have like 15 minutes. And I'm like, 15 minutes? It's like 15 hours to do, just to show you. But okay, well, we'll start there, right?
Yeah.
And so we walked through the process, David. It was great to show a person like, what are we doing right now? We're just capturing footage. There's nothing you can do right now? Nope. Got to wait till the footage gets in the computer. Oh. Okay, that takes somebody that time, right? And then, cutting some stuff up and, oh, you want to put a transition in there? Throw a transition in there? You're waiting. Why are we waiting? Well, because the computer has to render this so you can see the preview before you, oh, wow, okay, so we're waiting, right? And then, we show the preview. Hey, you want to try a different one? Throw a different one there. Oh, what are we doing now? We're waiting for that to render just because you want to see a different version of what you just did with a different transition. After that, I mean, it really was like an hour and a half ended up being. That pastor got a great idea of what when they asked for something like that, what it would take. Now, I'll be honest, it didn't stop them from asking. But when I said, hey, we need more resources, if you're going to keep calling people on Friday, I need a couple editors ready for you on Friday and Saturday to do this. And they were like, it makes sense. If I'm going to be the problem and I know that I'm going to, okay, then we need to get some resources to do that. And it helped, create more answers for than just do it and get it done. So I love what you said, because that's some of that is just understanding each other and walking through, putting yourself in their shoes.
Pull the black curtain back. Let them see what's behind the scenes. I think a tour for the worship team through everything that you guys do and what you have to do is always, always wise. I actually have a funny story. I had a pastor that I worked with that was always saying, hey, you guys spend so much money. And he walked into the video room, and we weren't ready for this. So I was kind of proud of, it was a larger church, so I had a staff. And he walked into the video room, and he said, see, look at all these monitors. There was like 30 monitors in the video room. He said, you guys don't need all these monitors. Like, tell me what every single monitor's for. And I was kind of proud of my video director. He stood up and he said, okay, this is what this monitor's for. This is what this monitor's for. And he went through every single monitor. And he almost was done, and the pastor was like, okay, you can stop. I get it. They're actually needed. But the video director said, it was a funny story. He said, well, there is one monitor we don't need. And the pastor said, what's that? He goes, it's this one right here, and it's dedicated to the Dallas Cowboys. That's where we watch the Cowboys.
So you get one, yeah.
Yep. Well, anyway, big Cowboys fan this pastor was. No, that monitor didn't go away.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
But talking about the backstage, kind of showing the worship team some things. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen during the week, especially when you work for a church that has staff members that are on staff in order to, to facilitate volunteer coordination and then facilitate a Sunday. So, Dennis, what rhythms or routines, and what I'm talking about here is meetings, rehearsals, debriefs, what rhythms and routines there do you find essential to keep tech and creative teams aligned and unified?
Yeah, there's quite a few things, but again, I think I mentioned it in the beginning. I think we need to look at a process if you don't have one already, right? There's a refining process for any idea you have. Like you have the brainstorm, yeah, great, but after that, usually it goes from brainstorm, David, to execution, right? In a lot of places. And there's a lot of steps in there that have to happen, and usually they just happen organically. Like, did the pastor check that? Did they sign off on it, or did the worship pastor? Like, if you're creating a video or you're doing some huge stage reset, like you get that brainstorm, a bunch of ideas, and then it's like, then you get to execution, and people are like, well, that's not what I wanted. Like, how did we get there? And you're like, oh, it's a good question. I thought I was following what you wanted, but there weren't any other check-ins along the way. Focusing and taking a look at what are we on track? Are we not on track? Review process, all those things. So for me, if you don't have one of those, it'd be really important to have some kind of process in place with a regular meeting schedule on it. So there's the brainstorm, and then there's the focus. You focus down on what you actually want to do, gather, get the logistical people together, getting the right people in the room. So there's like probably 4 or 5 steps in there. Probably another podcast we can go through on the creative process, right? If you don't have one, but you need one all the way through to execution. And then at the end, after execution, you need an evaluation time. You really do. Most of the time, we never have time for it. But like, what went right, what went wrong? I mean, you could do a 4 helpful lists, get all the things that went bad, all the things that are good, and process that. But really, it's like, what worked really well, and then what do we need to fix next time? What was wrong in our communication process, or how we got this done, or expectations on it, so we can learn. And I just know that most organizations, including many of them that I've been involved with, they just don't take the time to actually have a formal process. So it kind of gets lost, and there's a re-edits and workbacks, and then somebody was left out of the loop in that process. So it went brainstorm to execution, and it's like in between there was just really nothing, and it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So for if it were me, I would be setting up those regular meetings on whatever ideas and process. So like even just for the weekend service, do you have a process of like songs and other elements in the service and special things and pastor's message and all those things? They all have to get done, by Thursday at 3. But it's like they just all kind of throw together. Like, no, you need a process on each of those elements, and hopefully you're actually further out, for several weeks, several months out. So it's not like everything is immediate and due at the very end of that week for you. So.
Yeah, people try to develop those processes during the creative meetings, and that's a problem. So what Dennis is saying there is, yeah, you need steps to get you to the weekend. Don't develop those during the week. Those need to be developed in advance and agreed to. And what happens there is when you do that, if you say, hey, we need the song list in by Wednesday or Thursday or whatever time it is, and that's agreed to, then when the song list comes in on Friday, there's an expected grace, or there should be an expected grace, because it came in late. I've worked with a lot of big time senior pastors, and they were always pushing for their notes to come in as late as possible. But I will tell you this, every single one of them, to a person, if they sent them in late, there was an expected grace. They understood, hey, this scripture may not make it in for the first service, but it's definitely going to be there for the second service. So there was an expected grace. And I think the post-mortem kind of looking back is more important than the actual looking forward. And the reason why I say that is if you just keep making the same mistakes over and over again, what are we doing? We're creating frustrations that we can avoid. And so the post-mortem, or the, looking at the service or the special service or whatever it is after the fact, and kind of detailing, how did this go? How could we have done better? What mistakes did we make? What do we not want to do in the future? I think that's way more important, in my opinion, than the actual planning sessions. Do you agree with that?
Hmm. Yeah, I do. And so again, every you should have a process, whether it's formal or not. And so I think you're saying exactly what I'm saying, and so here's my process: dream, focus, reality, refocus, execute, evaluate. It's those steps, and you don't have to do them all. You can some can go faster, some can slow right through that process. But if you define the process, at least you know where you're at. Like, right? If you know, you're like, I don't know. Did we, what part are we on right now? So if you say dream, it's the brainstorming, right? Then we get into focus. But then we get into reality is next. It's like, are we at the reality stage or we need to go back to refocus, right? Are we good? We're done, right? And then we can go and execute. But it helps everyone to be on the same page, David. And that's, it's again, you're always going to have the last minute, like, hey, I want this, I need this. And sometimes you need to walk through like what it really is going to take to do that and plan for the future. Like you said, evaluate afterwards to say, like, I think we need more resources if we're going to keep doing it this way. So it's not saying, no, we can't do it this way. If we're going to keep doing, if this is normal, if this is how your brain works, if you're a perceiver in the Myers-Briggs world, then you're going to leave all your options open until the very last minute. Right. So I'll give you an example. One of the churches I worked for, David, because the pastor was pretty adamant on like, I am, yeah, I want to leave space for the Holy Spirit to, and I may change my notes all the way to the last minute. So we had to create a printing press on site, right? And a number of people that would print and stuff those into the bulletins, right, before the services. And the deadline was like Saturday morning. And so we created the resources because that's how the pastor was. And I get some of you may go like, so you just give the pastor whatever he wants. Well, no, I think it's that, hey, if you're always, there's the exception, the rule, right, David? And if the exception is always the normal, then you may need to change the rule because it's the reality of who you are. Or you need to go, this isn't for me. That's okay. Not everything's for everybody, right? But people will go around the system, if the system doesn't fit what they need to do. And so you got to figure out what the norm is in your system. Is this reality of what we should be doing, the way we should be doing it, or do we need more resources? And the great leaders and great pastors I've run into, like, will change and add more resources if needed, if that's how they're going to operate, and it's training the rest of the staff to do it that way. So, it's understanding that, right?
Yeah, I have a kind of a cool story that ties into that. I had a pastor that he would always change his mind on whether or not he wanted a headset or a handheld. And it would always be right before the service started or right before he walked out. Oh, I need a headset. Oh, I need a handheld. And I think paying attention to those types of mistakes or issues and then asking questions about them will help you. And here's how this story went. I finally went back and said, hey, I noticed almost every week you change your mind whether or not you want a headset or you want a handheld. Is there something in your mind that's saying, hey, I need a headset this week or I need a handheld? And he goes, oh, yeah, it's pretty simple. When I'm preaching, I want a headset. And when I'm teaching, I want a handheld. And I said, oh, okay, well, how do we know the difference, right? He said, it's simple. Like when I give you sermon notes with scriptures and things like that, I'm preaching. And, and then I'm teaching when I don't give you that. And I said, oh, okay, can we make it even more simple? When you turn in your sermon notes, can you tell us I'm preaching this week or I'm teaching this week or I need a headset or I need a handheld? He goes, yeah, I absolutely can do that. From that point forward, when we would get his notes on a Friday, it would say, need a headset or need a handheld.
Wonderful.
And we resolved a problem that all of us thought he was just randomly off the top of his head going, I'm going to do a handheld this week. But when we actually had a chance to communicate with him, and I think that's another issue, direct communication can sometimes be a problem to your senior pastor. But if you can get direct communication on why you're having a problem, 9 times out of 10, you resolve it. In this case, now every volunteer, every paid staff member, every single person knew he needed a headset or he needed a handheld before he walked up on the platform. And so it's kind of a cool story of, collaboration and kind of, how the rules and the guidelines and the laws and how you can just, kind of pay attention and go, wait a minute. This, to me, the reason why I asked the question is it didn't seem random, even though to everybody else it did. Mm-hmm. And so when I asked the question, I got my answer. It wasn't random. He actually had reasoning behind, the preach or the teach and what he wants and how he wants to do it. Well, Dennis, man, this has been fun. I know, a lot of people are sitting there thinking, hey, I want some more advice, some more insights, some more help. How do they get in touch with you if that's the case?
Yeah, I'm, David, me, I've been, this has been kind of a hobby for a long time, full-time ministry, but then helping other churches any way I can, has been something I just love to do. And so I'm going to continue to do that even in my role, at HouseRight. But my email is just Dennis, DENNIS @houseright.com. You can really ask me anything about ministry. I was executive pastor at North Coast Church. I mean, anything from like, how do you start small groups to like, how does this technology, what do I need? Whatever you want. I just want to help any way I can. And so please just email me, reach out to me. Email's the best for me because I can answer those at night. I don't have to, try to call you in the middle of the night or whatever. So that's the best way to reach out.
Yeah, and Dennis is in California, so if he answers you at night, it'll be like 1 or 2 in the morning, East Coast time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have more time. I have more time than the rest of the country.
That's right. Yeah. So let me repeat that. If you want to secure expert level advice from Dennis, be sure to reach out to him at dennis@houseright.com. That's dennis@houseright.com. Dennis, thanks for coming on the Tech Arts Podcast and sharing with our audience all of your amazing insights.
Hey, thanks for having me, David. Our friendship goes way back for years, and I just appreciate what you do and helping the community in ministry.
Well, that wraps things up for today's episode. I can't wait to talk to you on the next Tech Arts Podcast. Until then, I'm David Leuschner, signing off by wishing you a great day and praying God blesses every moment of your week. See you soon.
You have been listening to the Tech Arts Podcast, presented by Digital Great Commission Ministries. DGCM is a 501c3 nonprofit that was started to help churches with all things technical. Whether you need help building a team, finding the right gear, or just a better understanding of the church tech world, DGCM is here for you. Find out more about our free on-site visits, reports, and consulting by going to audiovideolighting.com. Digital Great Commission Ministries will help you run your church service like a pro. Find out more at audiovideolighting.com.
From sold-out stadiums to intimate live performance venues, sound engineers agree on one thing for the best digital mixing consoles for live sound. The only name that matters is Digico. As the recognized worldwide standard for live audio mixing, Digico consoles are renowned for their industry-leading sound quality and ease of use. Whether your application is in a church, broadcast, theater, corporate, sports, or installed sound, Digico offers compact and affordable products. From the S21 all the way up to the pioneering power of the Quantum 852, Digico delivers the workflow, the feature set, and the absolute reliability that the world's biggest tours and programs have come to rely upon. If you're looking for a sound console, look to Digico for your answer. For more information on Digico, go to digico.biz. That's digico.biz.
This podcast is brought to you by AC Americas, a distributor of lighting, audio, and video solutions. acamericas.net.
From front of house to center stage, for over 25 years, Earthworks microphones have sculpted the sounds of your favorite concerts, venues, and performances. Earthworks Audio is a sponsor of the Tech Arts Podcast. We are so happy to have them on board and excited to promote the new Earthworks SR117 vocal mic and capsules. To find out more about Earthworks Audio or to get your hands on this mic, go to earthworksaudio.com. That's earthworksaudio.com. Capturing emotion with sound. earthworksaudio.com.